I would love you to tell the listeners about it and to explain what it is and why it is so important.
Sure. So for the second year in a row, HERD put out what we call the Financial State of Private Practice report. So we surveyed over 2,000 private practice therapists nationwide about their finances, and we shared those findings in a report. And the data shared in that report includes data that's not available anywhere else, including reimbursement rate by insurance company. So there's a lot of really great insights, and it's available on our website. You can download it for free.
Hi, and welcome to the Wavelength. We are the mental health podcast designed for digital natives and those who are perplexed by them. In each episode, we explore themes, trends, innovations, and all other things shaping how today's tech-immersed generations care for their mental health. I am your host, Dr. Sarah Adler, clinical psychologist, Stanford professor, and entrepreneur. And I am so excited to introduce Michael Fullwiler, who is the head of marketing at HERD. And Michael has more than a decade of professional marketing experience in the mental health. I actually needed some marketing help and pinged him and was like, please come talk to me. He is the director of brand at HERD, which is the financial back office for therapists. Definitely check it out. He's the founder of Fullwiler Media, a content marketing consultancy for mental health companies, creator of Therapy Marketer, which is an awesome newsletter for therapists, and an advisor to multiple mental health tech companies. Previously, he was also the chief marketing officer at the Gottman Institute, which, if you don't know what that is sort of the preemptive couples relationship therapy institution with an incredible amount of science-backed information for how to have a successful relationship. So very cool. Welcome, Michael. Super excited to have you.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't know if you invited me or if I invited myself, but I'm happy to be here.
Either way, I feel like it's a win-win situation. So thank you for being here. We do a little interview icebreaker at the beginning of each of our podcasts, where I invite you to do 2 truths and a lie for our audience. So you'll give me 2 truths and a lie, and then I'm going to use my my psychological skills to guess which one is the lie. And so we'd love to kind of get to know you a little bit starting there.
Sure. So I am very passionate about travel. And so I think mine will be travel themed. So my first truth is that I've been skydiving in Switzerland. My second is that I've been cage diving with great white sharks in South Africa. And my third is that I was the student body president of my high school in Japan.
Okay. So I feel like the lie has to be the geography. I'm guessing all 3 of those things are actually true. It's just the location of one of them that is off. So that's my rationale. And I'm going to go with number 1 as the lie, which is skydiving, but not in Switzerland.
Well, it was the lie. I've actually never been skydiving. Been to Switzerland. I considered going skydiving while I was there. You can skydive in Interlaken over the Swiss Alps. Apparently it's an amazing experience, but I just didn't pull the trigger on it.
So bucket list. Next time you go to
Sure. Now I feel like I have to.
Now you said it. Everyone. So you absolutely.
Yes. Great psychoanalysis.
No, but the deductive reasoning was slightly off, but you can see where I go with this. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So firstly, tell me and everyone else who doesn't know and absolutely should know about HERD and what you all do there.
HERD is an accounting software startup specifically for therapists and mental health professionals. So if you are thinking about going into private practice, you're going to have to be thinking about how to manage your books, how to estimate your quarterly taxes, how to figure out your annual taxes, if you need to run payroll and figure out how to hire other therapists and employees and contractors, things like that. HERD helps with all of that. So, our goal is really to streamline the financial part of running a private practice so therapists can focus on the work that they actually want to do, right? Which is working with clients and not managing their finances.
So when you all came out, when you all founded the company, I just remember thinking this is so on the money. For a couple of reasons. One, I own a group private practice where I've got 25 clinicians who work for me there. And the main reason that they want to come work, well, not one of the main reasons, there are a lot of reasons why you want to join a group private practice, but one of them really truly is like, I'm not a business person and I don't want to run a business. And therefore, I just want to show up and kind of do my job. And I think that there are a lot of group practices that are pretty exploitative, and we are very pleased to not be one of them. We really kind of want to run a business so that our tagline is like, we've created a business so that you can do anything you want to do as a therapist. And I think that that is very much mission aligned. But the reality is, I think a lot of people join group private practices because they just want to show up and do their work. And then they get a lot of money kind of taken off the top to do that. It's really exploitative. And so I think it's really awesome what you all are doing. And I always say, especially in this field, I always say it's a lot easier to teach clinicians the business side than it is to teach business people the clinical side. And so it's awesome that y'all are doing that.
Thank you. Yeah. As a therapist, you're not taught in graduate school how to be a business person, right? Like most therapists don't even take a business class unless maybe they took one in undergrad. And then, once you graduate and you decide, hey, I want to start my own private practice, suddenly now you're a business owner and you have to figure out finances and accounting and these things that no one ever taught you unless, maybe you worked in a group practice and you learned that way.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, it's interesting because, few pieces of that. One is that not only are we not taught business, and I have a background in business, and so I was taught business, but because I was a business person for years before I became a therapist, but we're not even taught about how to talk about money. So many of us are trained in practicum sites or training sites where we never see money at all. And so even the interchange of like that we are a business is sort of a taboo subject. And so I think one of the coolest things about HERD is that you're bringing those conversations that can be really difficult. Like, right, therapists avoid talking about money, sex, and anger. And you're bringing some of those conversations to the forefront so that it actually normalizes it, that like you are a business. It helps reframe for the therapist that no, the thing you're doing, you're not just providing a mission-driven service, you're doing something to make money. And that's not taboo. It's the reality.
Yeah, it is okay to want to make money as a therapist, right? I think that's kind of, to your point, what a lot of therapists are told in graduate school. It's like, we don't get into this field, into this work, to make money. We get into it to help people, but those things aren't mutually exclusive. And I think that attitude is changing. Hopefully.
Well, I think you all are helping to change it by bringing the conversation into the forefront. And then the other thing I think that is just so cool is you all, the business side takes time, and any time you're spending learning accounting, learning a balance sheet, learning to run the business is time you're not spending with your patients. And that does cost you money as well. So I think it's just great. It's great what you're doing.
Thank you. I think it's a very exciting time to be a therapist. And, it's an exciting time to come into the field. We talk a lot about this idea of the entrepreneurial therapist at HERD, where, as a therapist, you're not just seeing clients one-on-one in sessions. Maybe you're offering coaching services, or you're speaking, or you're creating content on social media and you're getting brand deals, right? Like, there's so many ways that as a mental health professional, you can apply your expertise. And it's also just so in demand right now. Like, a lot more people are talking about mental health, which I think is a net positive. And so as a mental health professional, there's a lot of conversations that you can enter that maybe before, weren't as accessible.
That's so true. It's the flexibility that you have as a therapist, given your expertise and your ability to sort of channel that in lots of different places is huge. And so your tool is really, I think, helping. Interestingly, is similar to in our practice, but it's creating a platform for people to do the work they want to be doing, whatever that looks like. and that's awesome. Okay, so tell me, I'm curious a little bit about who is on Herd's platform, and I'm curious about those folks who are engaging in social media and doing the influencer thing, are sort of not just sitting and being a therapist. Do you find that more digital natives are kind of on the platform and kind of ripe and excited to do those things?
I think inherently, therapists who are entering the field now are more open to using technology to run their business, right? Where historically a therapist would have, a CPA that they'd, meet with once a month and look over their books together and all of that. Like now that can happen online. You don't even need to meet with someone, in person. You have software that automates a lot of that for you, where you can just log into your account on Herd, which is connected with your bank account. So you can see like real time how much money has come into your business this month, how much money you've spent has gone out in expenses, so you can get like a real time view on how your business is performing. And so I would say our customers tend to skew a bit younger in that sense, just because they're came into sort of the workforce more comfortable with using software. But that's not to say that that's like the only therapists who are on Herd. We have therapists across the kind of spectrum.
I have to say, my therapist still does everything with like pen and paper, and I got like an email invoice. Like I don't even think she has an EHR.
You
like
send a check. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
No, she does actually she does take a credit card, but that, I think that's as far as it goes. But
Right.
yeah, in terms of that. So why is it so fundamentally important to be supporting providers right now? Like, what is it about this climate? What is it about that? You said it was an exciting time to be a therapist, and I would agree with that entirely. And so what makes it so important to be able to support them as well?
Yeah, I think coming out of the pandemic, the conversation around mental health has been a lot more out in the open, right? And it's become more acceptable and even celebrated to say you're in therapy and you have a therapist and you have, athletes and celebrities who are talking about going to therapy, and it's becoming like a lot more normalized and less stigmatized. Yet I think the mental health professionals who are providing those services, I think, are still underappreciated. They're undervalued. They're often underfunded as well. And so, you have a group of people who are coming out of graduate school, often with a ton of student loans, working in community mental health agency where they're not making very much money, right? And they're just like really struggling to get by. And so I think like if those providers burn out, right? Like there's already a shortage of therapists just due to the demand. If we don't take care of our mental health professionals, more and more will leave the field, which then will just continue to, increase the mental health crisis that we're in. So I think like in order to solve the mental health crisis, we also need to support the folks who are actually providing mental health services, because they have their own mental health too, right? Like
totally. And we're usually pretty terrible at actually taking care of ourselves, which is problematic. So anything we can do to help support us. And actually, I think what's kind of interesting. Okay, I have a hypothesis. I have no idea if this is true, but that I would be far more inclined to take care of myself by like using a piece of software than I would be to maybe actually like take time for myself in terms of like putting in bathroom breaks in my day or something. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And there's also so many software companies that are trying to solve the access problem, right? Of like, how can we scale access to therapy, which I think is great, right? It's making therapy more accessible for people who may not otherwise be able to receive therapy or even coaching, which is great. And I think if we can also empower the providers who are providing that therapy, to your point, that's, saving them time as well, which like if they save 2 hours a week using Herd, they can either see 1 or 2 more clients and make more money. They can also not work and take those 2 hours and do something fun for themselves or spend that time with their family, right? So I think it's about, like giving providers time back that they can, either reinvest in their business or just spend however they want. And I think it is important to also build for them too.
I think it's so true. And it's, I think, there are pros and cons to the scalable psychotherapy model, right? Like obviously, and I think actually a lot of the psychotherapy businesses who are underpaying their therapists, treating them basically like glorified Uber drivers, like to high volume. I think, again, part of the reason, back full circle, that therapists would choose to show up and join a company that might not be exploitative is because they don't have support to run their own business. And so to me, I'm actually really excited to see a world where more clinicians are going into private practice because they actually will have bigger bargaining power to insurance companies and to create a marketplace that is actually more favorable to support their lives and to prevent burnout than some of these like scalable giants who are really treating their providers horribly, both from a work-life balance perspective, but also just not. So you recently had an incredibly exciting report come out, and I would love you to tell the listeners about it and to explain what it is and why it is so important.
Sure. So for the second year in a row, HERD put out what we call the Financial State of Private Practice report. So we surveyed over 2,000 private practice therapists nationwide about their finances, and we shared those findings in a report. And the data shared in that report includes data that's not available anywhere else, including reimbursement rate by insurance company. So there's a lot of really great insights, and it's available on our website. You can download it for free.
Okay. So back to what we were just talking about, why is that so fundamentally important to be able to have transparency around insurance reimbursement?
Insurance reimbursement in particular, because we found that, on average, the reimbursement rate for a session of individual therapy is 25% less than what the average therapist is charging for cash pay, right? That difference is the average therapy session that's like out of network cash pay is $157 versus $122 that a therapist is getting from insurance. So across the board, and that's probably skewed a little bit higher as well, right? Because a lot of our survey respondents are in New York and California, and inherently as a tech company, we have a lot of therapists like who live in cities, right, that are part of our audience that took the survey. But therapists don't talk about how much they're getting from insurance. They actually have to sign an NDA as part of their contract with payers that they won't disclose what their reimbursement rates are. So that information isn't publicly available. And when you look at the numbers, therapists are, vastly underpaid by insurance companies when you look at their MD counterparts. So that's like definitely a big one for sure.
I think it's awesome. And it's, again, there's sort of, there's a lot of talk about therapists unionizing and how, right, like this sort of movement to pay us what we're worth, and sort of more systematically across the country. And I think data like this is incredibly useful to eliminate the barriers to having the conversations where that we can actually leverage our skill as a collective bargaining unit, rather than, again, be subject to sort of the whims of the payers. So that's kudos to you all. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think there's also this perception that therapists make a lot of money. I think it's just like therapy is expensive. Therapists must make a lot of money. But when you actually look at the data, we found, at least last year, so in 2023, 89% of therapists that we surveyed made less than 6 figures in profit. So only 11%, basically like 1 in 10, made over $100,000 in profit last year. And when you compare that to like a tech salary, for example, right? Like it's pretty mind blowing. And I think part of that is understanding that when you look at what a therapist is charging per session, it's not comparable to like an hourly rate in a salaried position, right? Because even like full-time therapist is seeing 20, 25 clients, right, a week. And that's like without taking vacation or time off, anything like that. And there's also a lot of expenses and student loans, like I mentioned. And so being a therapist is very expensive. And so what we found is that, most therapists are making under 6 figures in profit. And when we look at compared to the previous year, that number was down actually 27% year over year. So in 2022, 65% made below that 6-figure mark. So what that tells me is that therapists are taking home less money than they were even 2 years ago. A big part of that is that expenses for everyone are up, right? Like you feel that, I'm sure, at the gas pump and at the grocery store. An interesting learning for us is like 2 years ago. So in 2022, we asked therapists, in 2023, so next year, are you planning to raise your fees? And 64% of them said yes, they were planning to. More than half were like, yeah, I'm definitely going to raise my rates next year. But then when we asked them this year, hey, did you raise your fees last year? Only 33% of them actually did. So only 1 in 3 raised their rates, even though 2 in 3 said that they were planning to, right? So expenses are up, rates aren't going up, profits are down. That's just math.
And this is something that I feel like is, so again, goes back full circle to therapists not wanting to talk about money, right? And then not wanting to, feeling guilt and shame around actually being a real business. And it's amazing that Herd is trying to combat some of that by normalizing the discussion. Okay, really quickly, because we are out of time. This has been super fun. Do you want to just talk briefly about your other new announcement?
Sure. So it may or may not be out by now. If not, breaking news here on the podcast. Herd is launching a show. It's called Herd Business School. It will be available on YouTube as well as all podcast platforms. And the premise of the show is exactly what we've talked about today, and that most therapists don't have a business background. They don't go to business school. They don't even take a business course, in graduate school. And so we're pulling the curtain back on the business of therapy. So very excited about it. It's hosted by me, and it will be launching in June.
Awesome. Very cool. I cannot wait. And it's so important. So Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I am thrilled to have had you. This was super fun. Thanks for tuning in to The Wavelength, your guide to mental health in the digital age. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're looking to actively support your own mental health, please be sure to download our app, Wavelength. It's the only digital health solution designed from the ground up for digital natives. Join us next time as we continue to navigate the highs and lows of emotional well-being for digital natives on The Wavelength. And if you're needing some immediate support, we've got 3 great hotlines for you. Crisis Text Line, the National Suicide Hotline, 988, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline site. Also, the Trevor Project for LGBTQ youth, and the Trans Lifeline. Our music is Gold Roses from Cloud System, and you can join us next time as we continue to navigate highs and lows of emotional well-being on The Wavelength.